who is Go Collaborate. Josh Guy. Josh is the head platform development, digital community engagement lead at Go Collaborate. He is helping local councils develop effective and creative community engagement strategies for neighbourhood planning, development and community regeneration projects. And I believe he has some friends with us as well. So over to you. Thank you so much, Josh.
Thank you very much, Peggy, and good afternoon, everybody. Here is our lovely little session that we've managed to manufacture for you guys. I'm going to be talking relatively briefly over the next 30 minutes about successful NDPs and the importance of effective community engagement. So I'd like to say welcome. And as Becky alluded to, my name is Josh Guy. I'm the digital community engagement lead at Go Collaborate. And the focus of this 30-minute session is about broadening and optimizing your digital community engagement and avoiding the pitfalls. Why? Well, we know that over 80% of adults in the UK have a smartphone, and that the elderly, as one example, have become more connected than ever before, especially since the COVID pandemic. So, are you making it as easy, safe, and engaging as possible for your communities to find time in their busy lives and feedback about NDP development? Right, the first part of this session is to hear from two experienced professionals involved in NDP plan development. They'll speak for about 15 minutes, leaving around 10 minutes for questions and discussion, and for anyone here to share their story on what worked well or not on their digital community engagements. If you would like, please, if you have any questions or comments, we can put them in the chat bar and we'll pick up on these in the discussion time at the end. And if there's not enough time, of course, one of us will come back to you after our session. So before I hand you over to our speakers, in case you are not aware, Go Collaborate is a proud commercial supplier to SLCC's local council members. We provide and build affordable online NDP community engagement platforms, of which integrates fully into the NDP planning processes end to end. It can help councils to gain better and richer quality community feedback and information to assist with robust and inclusive decisions about neighbourhood plan developments, or indeed any other community regeneration projects. These are our session aims, focuses, and anticipated outcomes. We hope to both share information and also discover why it's so worthwhile to optimise your digital engagement efforts. Now I have the pleasure to hand you over to our speakers, Steve Besford-Foster, who's a planning consultant from Plan Support, and Imelda Martin, who is the NDP project manager at Redruth Town Council. They will share some community engagement learning, top tips, and pitfalls to avoid. Oh, and there's Steve's face there as well. I'd like to hand over now to Steve.
Thanks, Josh. Hello, everybody. What I'm saying today is drawn from my work supporting about a dozen completed neighbourhood development plans in Cornwall. I'm currently working with another 6. And all of that is using both traditional and digital engagement approaches. So personally, I think we've seen a significant dip in the willingness of communities to engage since COVID. Could be many reasons for that. Maybe to start with, it was a fear of meetings and mixing, but that's diminished a lot. And there's definitely a continuing strong element of cynicism, a sort of loss of credibility in government and planning, which is having its impact on neighbourhood planning engagement as well. So when you're preparing a neighbourhood development plan, I think it's important to try and protect and build upon their credibility. Now, Josh mentioned about smartphones and online awareness growing since COVID. Well, that really provides us with a really good opportunity to make it as easy as possible for people to engage with an NDP and to make that engagement safe, but meaningful and long-term as well, and possibly bring wider benefits to local council work. And of course, we've also got to remember to try and keep up with the digitisation of planning, which is being driven by the Levelling Up Bill. So what are the pillars for successful community engagement? Well, definitely a budget that is sensible but adequate. And by that, I mean, don't rely upon traditional formats. Make sure you include the digital engagement approach. It doesn't have to be huge, but make sure there's enough in there to cover traditional leafleting and advertising and a digital engagement approach. And be prepared to flex the budget in case there's a need for additional engagement as you go along. For example, taking a deep dive into a particular issue. Housing, as we've just heard, could be one of those issues you might need to deep dive into. You need your budget to be based on a very clear community engagement strategy that is digitally fit for purpose. Start off using stakeholder analysis to work out who you should be engaging with and how to engage with them. If you work out who will be impacted by your neighbourhood plan and what their needs and expectations might be for consultation, you can work out best how to engage with them and how often you should engage with them. I think it's important to research what's out there in terms of apps and digital community engagement platforms and trends in community use of information online and online communications. And it's really good as part of the strategy if you can set up a small consultation team with a lead person in charge to make it happen and work the strategy. And within that, having a social media campaign lead person to be in charge of each of the channels and to do the content management of the material that you're using. Don't rely upon Facebook alone. I'm sure you all know about that. It's very, very popular, but it's also very limited in what it can do. It can't host documents effectively and can get really badly out of control sometimes. So don't rely upon Facebook alone. Ideally, don't create a website, but use a proper digital engagement platform as your neighbourhood plan website, integrate the whole thing. If you do decide to have a website for the neighbourhood plan, or you have an extra page on your existing council website, then I think it's important to make sure there's a specification for it that's clear on its purpose and how it will link to digital engagement. Keep them simple, keep websites simple, avoid fancy graphics and animations. Just a basic WordPress site will do if you're going to go down that line. You need to have a generous allowance of time and effort for setting up and creating the online platform and leaflet content. It can't be done in a few minutes. I think it's nice to have explainer videos and interesting local images and so on on a website to make the messages relevant and interesting, give them local appeal. It's really good if you can use digital mapping tools. Parish Online is the one that most neighbourhood plans get involved in. And make sure that any digital documentation that you're producing is mobile friendly. It's really difficult to read a lengthy PDF on a small smartphone. It's very important if you're using a digital platform to follow the onboarding guide. It's really vital. Initially, it may be difficult to understand how digital engagement platforms work, but that dissipates with practice. You're always going to have people that aren't familiar with IT, so other channels should be available for them. And always, combine things, make sure that things tie in together. So your traditional methods and your online methods should tie together in terms of messages and branding and so on. So there's no confusion about it. And right from the start, I would say, start your equalities impact assessment approach right from the start as an integral part of it. So you're making sure that you're getting the reach in your consultations and engagement into the different 9 protected characteristics that are covered there. For any surveys or consultations, start early, use social media, not just Facebook, leaflets, posters, cards with QR codes and so on that link to the online survey to kickstart the response, and keep it up right the way through to the referendum. Now, you'll all know that local councils can't campaign for a yes vote, but you can promote turnout and explain what it's all about. If you don't, you're at risk at the end of the whole process. I think care is needed with publicity to avoid oversimplification, no, because otherwise people can accuse you of giving misleading information. And really important, have sufficient human resources to manage and staff your engagement process, because you need to do it real-time evaluation to take up any slack or lack of response in certain areas. You've got to have someone who's going to work the consultation and engagement strategy, make sure it happens. And if you're going to do drop-ins and things like that, you've got the sort of health and safety and safeguarding issues to cover there. So it's really important that your volunteer team that are supporting a neighbourhood plan is big enough to back up what's going on when you're doing community engagement. Looking on to the next slide, if you can use community leaders to amplify your campaign, that's really good. The local movers and shakers, organisational chairs and so on, get them briefed, get them out there spreading the word around. Perhaps if there's a young person in a youth forum or something like that you can push to try and use things like Instagram or TikTok or Twitter, if it still exists in the future, it might be effective. Word of mouth through clubs, groups, pubs and streets, street corner meetings and so on is so effective. It's worthwhile encouraging discussion because community conversation is a really important part of plan making. So I think if you've got an engagement platform, it's really good to have a chat facility within that, but making sure that that's actively moderated because there is a risk of chat facilities being gamed by interest groups. That might be people who are against the development, or it could be a developer that might try to do that. And of course, you can use your engagement strategy and your approach to digital community engagement to set up a positive working relationship and trust over the long term by feeding back through the platform or by the emails that are collected and by press releases and so on, what you've done with that engagement, what the results of it are. And that can again be used in the future. And subject to GDPR and how you set that up, you might be able to use the registrations for other areas as well. So just going on to the final slide, there's really major benefits, I think, from the digital approach. It's going to be easier administratively to manage. You will get the costs down and possibly you can use the platform for other purposes. You get much greater reach and depth of community involvement, and you can deeper dive into issues as well. The quality and relevance of the information that comes back in is great. It's transparent because it's available for all to see, and it's a fixed and accessible record. So what you get at the end of it by using a digital platform is something which people can actually log into to see. It's not, and the records are available to the council. It's not, the results aren't just on an Excel file in someone's data stick in their pocket that have gone. And you've got the community consensus building potential of it all. So I think it's a really valid approach to get more digitally aware in doing community engagement on neighbourhood plans, and that should really apply to everything else that local councils can do and take forward. So thanks for listening. Happy to discuss any queries in the Q&A afterwards.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Steve. Thanks for that insight. Lots of really good takeaways there, and definitely on how to get the most out of a consultation. I'd like to hand now over to Imelda Martin, who's, of course, like I mentioned, the Redruth NDP project manager. If I can click the next slide.
Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I am the project manager for Redruth Parish NDP, but I'm also a resident of Redruth, and I work partly volunteer and partly in a paid role, working on the NDP. And my role is leading on the consultation. I'm part of a steering group of 15 people. I'm not the chair, but also leading on coordinating the technical studies and the overall development of the NDP document, and also writing it. I'm going to quick background on Redruth. So Redruth is a town in Cornwall. It's not just a town, sorry, it's a parish. It's part rural, it's part urban. It's quite complex. It's a World Heritage Site town, 2 conservation areas, got areas of deprivation, areas of affluence. Our housing number has been developed through the Cornwall Local Plan in a larger conurbation called CPIR, which is Camborne, Poole, Redruth and Iluggan. So we've used our housing needs assessment to establish the figure for Redruth, and listening to part of the earlier conversation, also what the need is. You can't just build housing, you've got to build what's required for the parish. So we've done quite a lot of work on that. We've got a growing population. The plan period is 2010 to 2030, and the population of Redruth Parish is estimated to grow by 36%, and is actually already nearly at that figure. Our plans looked at housing. We've looked at employment, because we've got 2 employment sites which are recognised in the Cornwall local plan, but several others which aren't, and 2 of which are new during the plan period. And we've looked at issues to do with the heritage, which is part of the town, and also the town centre. So the journey started in 2016, and I'm really talking as a case study. The first work was done by a research company called PFA Research, which was local, and it was very much a traditional questionnaire, business survey, and workshops with people, which would produce a really good report which captured the issues from which the policy areas have been developed. So from 2017 to 2019, we did the housing needs assessment, we gathered evidence, and in early 2020, we tested our 30-question issues consultation in January and February, and then in March, COVID hit. And that really ground work on consultation to a halt, as we all know. Some work did continue on gathering evidence. We were working at the time on a particular site in Redruth, doing some master planning work. So we did continue with some of that. And we became aware of Go Collaborate offering their bespoke digital platform. And we were an early user with Go Collaborate, and they worked very closely with us. They worked with us to develop a bespoke platform for Redruth to ask our 30 questions. And for me, some of the major benefits of working with the bespoke platform is that we could display all the reference materials which were relevant to the questions, and also work with digital mapping, which people could look at scale and also put comments on. So we worked with Go Collaborate, and we launched our issues consultation in March to July of 2021. We did it with traditional methods as well. So we had, I managed the community centre as well. So we had a room in the community centre, which was open to the public 2 days a week, with all the display materials in there. We had display in the library. We did the usual posters, business cards, and as much as we could, because we were still challenged at the time with having in-person meetings, we spread the word. The platform we developed where we could, we directed people to actually use the platform, but we also offered printed questionnaires so that people could input that way. I would say it's still challenging to get people to engage with an NDP because some of it's very dry, but I do think the platform helped people understand what it is that we're actually doing. So since then, what came out of our issues consultations is that we had some policy areas which were supported and some which weren't, including the vision for the town and the fact that there wasn't a plan for the town centre, which was and remains challenged. So we've worked, as we have done throughout this process, with anybody external that's working on the parish. So we worked with what's called the Heritage High Street Action Zone, which we've got in Redruth, to produce a vision and an investment plan for the town centre. We have inputted to the climate change DPD, we've inputted to the transport studies, we've inputted to the green infrastructure plan. So anything that's being developed in looking at wider Cornwall and the CPIR area in general, we've used the NDP to input into those places. We've got our document is worked up and it's with ACOM, having an SEA at the moment, and we're working towards pre-submission consultation this autumn. It's been a long process, and it's a difficult process, and resourcing is definitely a challenge, and I mean that by budget and people. But we've kept going, and we're going to keep going to get it done because there is value in doing it. And also I should say we're going to use Go Collaborate for our pre-submission consultation as well, because it worked really well.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Mel. a lot of very practical learning there on the reality of engaging communities, on the complexities of NDPs. I'm sure I speak for everyone here as I wish you the best of luck on the rest of your NDP journey.
Thank you.
So yeah, thank you very much, Steve and Mel. I think in summary, I'd just like to say it is essential that we build these plans to be as representative as we can, and being able to go digital is just one of the many tools that we can use in being able to achieve that goal, because ultimately these plans are built for the next generation. So I'd like to hand the session over to you guys now. If there's anything you would like to ask either myself or our speakers, I'll keep this slide up, which has some useful free resources available that can potentially aid in your consultation as we take some questions. So feel free to chime in. I'll have a look at the chat bar as well. And yeah, or put your hand up. I know that works sometimes.
It's quite hard to see everyone with the slide up, but we can move through. So if you do literally just, as he says, chime in. Oh,
Toonie.
I'm so
It's
sorry.
Toonie. I mean, so our neighborhood plan has already been ratified, but we're coming up for our 5-year review. And I'm looking at something like this. What if we used it just for our 5-year review to get the new version out? What else can we use it for? Or is it strictly structured to deal with neighborhood development plans? So
the platform that we offer specifically, that I suppose is the main one that I can talk about, is it can be used for everything. It's ideally just as a digital engagement tool where you can have all those documents on there. You can talk about the NDP plan that happened previously, the conclusions that were drawn there, the motivations behind reviewing the NDP, and also any community projects that might be coming out at the back of that. It's really just useful, we find, to have that core place where people know to go to that has all the information.
we could have a discussion like on our traffic restriction order on it or something like that. So,
Yes, yeah,
okay.
exactly, yeah.
All right,
It's really
thank
useful to
you.
have those interactive
Yeah, all that
mapping
other
tools.
stuff that's going on besides the neighborhood plan. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
So we had a question coming in the chat from Jenny. It says, if you do both digital consultation and paper-based consultation, how do you make sure that people don't do the consultation more than once?
That's a very good question. And as Steve alluded to as well, every now and again you have people trying to gamify the system, so they're trying a little bit too hard. But with second generation digital community engagement tools, such as the one that we at Go Collaborate use, it requires a registration for the users to use. They register using their email address, and it means that they are therefore more accountable for that answer. And we advise a lot of the time that when paper surveys are submitted, that will also should be accompanied by a name or an email address. And then as all of that data is pulled together into one fixed place, it means that we can kind of see if there's any duplications there. And it means that one user can say one thing, essentially.
If I can comment, one of the issues is of course that people may use a paper response and an online response. It becomes pretty obvious what's happening with that, though, because if they put in a paper response, then that paper response would have to be entered up physically by somebody into the base system that Go Collaborate have got set up. So you'd very quickly be able to identify where there's sort of common phraseology and common language and things like that. So it's not a problem particularly that I've experienced using the platform previously.
Great stuff. So a couple of questions that have both come in on pricing. So can you give us a breakdown of how much it will cost to use the site?
So for Go Collaborate specifically, we operate a base figure of about £500 for the first consultation, and that's normally that's the setting up, getting the platform up and running, and then we can chop and change it as things progress. If you go on to the next evolved stage of your NDP consultation, it's just a matter of putting on some more questions, and it means that that same user group as well can be tapped into. So from £500, but we can of course have a discussion after this session if you'd like to get in contact with me.
The lovely Abby has been putting in lots of links there. So it was links to examples of these sites. So she's been busy doing that straight away. So any other questions from anyone in the room? We've got a couple of minutes left if there's anyone. I think everybody's clicking on these links.
I saw one question come up on the chat about how do you involve young people and people who don't own their own house. Well, I think I did touch on that in the presentation, but it's important to go through youth channels and explain and emphasize online and easy access. So it's really important, I think, to make sure that when you're going down that line, not to make the line of inquiry too hard, because you know, young people in particular, they've got very busy lives. They don't want to spend 15 minutes filling in a form or doing an online consultation. So you've really got to adjust the expectations to make sure that you're going to have a fairly easy rate of response from people. If you can access a young person as a champion to get the word about, that's really useful. But the other thing I would suggest is making sure that there's small cards with a QR code perhaps that links through to the platform that's available in lots of different places. And typically you could go out to the places that young people gather. So pubs, football and other running clubs, other sorts of clubs, maybe outside the local school or through the local school, the GP surgery, and any places where you'll expect young people to be gathering. You can easily hand out a card that they can take away with that QR code on and get them involved that way. But I think word of mouth is really important too in that sort of stuff.
Very good answer. Great. Well, we are at time. So thank you all three of you. That was really interesting and informative. And as a communications officer myself, I was making some notes. Thank you very, very much. So you'll all be, it's lunch.